Did you see that one this morning?
I did.
On Stephanopoulos? I thought it went okay.
I think you took over.
That was sort of my intention.
And it worked. In our newsroom this morning, that was the general consensus is that.
Well, and you see Chris Matthews now has admitted that everything he was saying wasn't true. It was coming from Jack Conway.
Mm-hmm. I have seen that been running. Okay. And we are running.
That's fine. But they need to be a little more careful reporting their news. I mean, because they did it all day long. And I know they're not really...
This is on the repeal question.
Well,
right?
Yeah, it's on the whole thing. I mean, they basically stated something adamantly that was my position that wasn't my position. They did it all day long on national news, and I don't think that's very fair.
Well, and on that score, just politically speaking, or strategically, why did you allow this to fester for so long? Because finally, then yesterday, to be fair, because then finally you came out on, I guess, on Wolf Blitzer and said, I would have voted yes. Had you
that
said
was
that
that was the next interview I had. I mean, I don't think I had another national interview till then, so it takes a while to get back on a program. We were also on national ABC when you were going to take the feed yesterday. I'm not sure how fair that was either, because I thought it was a very good interview. Did you see that interview? They didn't put it up. And they didn't use it, but they used it as sort of to get ready. It was sort of a get-ready interview, which I'm sure was their tactic, but I'm not sure that was that fair either, really. I mean, because they interviewed me for 5 minutes, found out all my answers in order to see what to get, They didn't ask any of those questions again. They wanted to ask a new series of questions. You know what I mean? So I don't think that was a very fair journalistic tactic to do a pre-interview, not use it, and then use it as a setup for another interview. So I wasn't real happy with the way that was set up.
But did you say yes? I think the question has to be asked. Did you say yes finally that you would have voted yes for the Civil Rights Act?
Yes. Yeah, in fact, I've said that several times. But see, I was never asked that. I went through a tortured 20 minutes on Rachel Maddow. She never asked me that. That was never a direct question to me on there. And
I'll have to review the tape. I was thinking that it was.
No, it was never a direct question. I was also never asked about, I've never ever been asked about, do you want to repeal? See, the thing is we're going over an issue that's been dead and settled for 46 years. I was a baby. I was 1 year old. So really, it isn't an issue that I thought we had to answer one way or another, because it's never been an issue. And so that's why I think it's contrived. And my point this morning with George Stephanopoulos is these are just Democrat talking points, because they decided we'll paint this guy as this and we'll say he's for this, but it didn't turn out that any of it was true. Can we hold 1 second? Who is that?
Sure. We'll stop.
And we'll have to stop we can break for a minute.
We can explain
You're taping all this anyway.
Yes,
right?
yeah. And we'll explain. We can go into say it on if people watch it later on. I put everything online, so there's no out of context. Right. So we can just say that you're in your office and you might need to take a telephone call.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm not editing out something that you didn't say,
that's
so
fine.
people don't think I'm being
always been fair. I don't have any complaints.
But just going back to that, do you wish now that you would have just said it out and out, and wouldn't that have stemmed it from the very beginning to say, I support the Civil Rights Act?
Right, but I think sometimes we are imperfect people, and we don't always say what we mean. We don't always explain what we mean very well, but also was never asked the question. So I was trying to answer the question, but I think getting too much into a philosophic debate about a moot point that I consider to be a moot point also, that we're not rediscussing or opening any of these issues, and have never. So, I mean, that to me a little bit is sort of a Democratic talking points or an ambush, kind of thing.
Given your principled positions on the role of government, and oftentimes those are in opposition to the way the government currently exists.
Right.
That's a fair statement, right?
Right.
Don't you expect more of this to happen day in and day out now for the rest of the campaign? Because it'll be challenged. Everything about the government in our lives will be challenged.
Right. But I think the thing is that, for example, we've brought up some of these issues before. What is it that you want in your ideal society, and what is it that you can do to try to fix government that's broken? To me, I look at government as not a utopian ideal that we can get to. But I can have a philosophic discussion with you over utopian ideals. But what I look at it and I say is, how do we fix Medicare? How do we fix Social Security so another generation gets it? We've all paid into it. It's not a discussion over whether we're having it or not having it. Let's try to fix it. And so the discussion is the demographic problem. We have one worker for one retiree. We now pay out more in Social Security than we take in. How do we fix these things? The deficit, it's enormous, $2 trillion in a year. How do we fix it? And so these are big problems, and we can get sidetracked into, emotional issues, but that have nothing to do with fixing the big problems. But I think it's also what a lot of the voters and the public in Kentucky are unhappy about, is that you get into this bickering, this Republican-Democrat bickering, and it's over something that is a decided issue and isn't going to help any of us get better government. But it turns out to be sort of sniping, partisan kind of sniping.
Do you expect, as a result, though, these blow-ups to keep happening?
No, not necessarily. I think that we were stuck in the middle of a big, huge national media cycle, and may still be in it, who knows. But I think that there are now clear answers where there weren't clear answers, and I would think that settles the question.
And you take some responsibility for the answers not being clear?
Yeah, I think so. But the other thing that's interesting is that our Senate campaign has become more the level of attention that a presidential campaign gets. And so you can see how people, sort of like doggedly grab an issue and won't let go. And I think that kind of stuff can happen sometimes when you get into an issue. So it's also why you see politicians, and I haven't been doing this a long time, but the ones who've been doing it a long time, don't talk to reporters very much, don't get interviewed very much, and also have a lot of people protecting them, layers and layers of protection. And I am more frank and open, and I think some people want that in government. They want a new type of person to go to government that isn't one of these people protecting layer on layer and who will give a 20-minute interview and never say anything. So that's kind of where we stand, and we learn from past experience.
So what lessons have been learned here?
I need to be very careful about going on certain networks that seem to have a bias, because it really wasn't the interview so much that was unfair. The interview, I think, was very fair, but then they went on a whole day repeating something over and over again, and it makes me less inclined to go on a network. I mean, I think you've been fair, but if your network all day says a lie about my position, I won't come back on. So I think good journalists understand that you have to present both sides. You ask tough questions, but you can't go on and then, as a journalist, misrepresent something. And I think even they realize they overstep their bounds on that, because they are now saying what my correct position is, and have admitted it never was my position otherwise.
Do you think it's fair sometimes to judge a candidate and what kind of senator or politician or office holder he would be by what kind of campaign he or she runs, in the sense that a lot of comments after all this happened, not ready for prime time, welcome to the big leagues, Doc. I mean, I heard all kind of comments. We're going to say this is you're in the big leagues now.
Right.
Is that fair?
Well, I think that you experience these things, and you get in the middle of a news cycle, and you're like, why did I go on that program, or why was I not more explicit in my answer? But I think the American public also sees people as human. I am a human. I'm fallible like anybody else. And so I don't think people immediately say, oh, that person can't be a senator because he can't always make the right answer, or he didn't have his people protect him from these people who would get him trapped into this interview. I think people see me as human, see others as human. I think they want someone to represent them that is like them, not some distant person who thinks they're better than them. And I consider myself to be just like everybody else, capable of saying good things, but also capable of making mistakes.
It appeared that the Grayson campaign, part of their strategy, if you want to call it that, was waiting for you to implode. Right. Was waiting for something like this to come up and to kind of swallow you whole, right, and then they just move on. Do you think that's happening now?
No, not really, because I think the issue now has been pretty well explained, and I think we were able to discuss a little bit of the complicated nature of the issue, but at the same time then finally have an answer as to what does this mean legislatively. But, I think that the issue only helps to explain and get people more involved in the debate and discussion over bigger government or smaller government. Deficits versus restrained constitutional government. So I think the discussion goes on, but I don't see anything here that is so out of the ordinary, except for that the media cycle kind of got going. I mean, it fed upon itself a little bit.
If any of your supporters are more apprehensive today, A, would you understand that?